Hi, it's Laura Giles, your host of Modern Animism Radio. Thanks for being here today. We have a guest. Her name is Laural Virtues Wauters. She's an author, storyteller, artist who talks to trees, and she's the creator of the Tree Spirit Tarot. Before we get to her, let's give gratitude to the elements and ancestors. To the earth below, who nurtures, supports, and feeds us, I give gratitude. To the air around us that fills our lungs, helps us to fly, communicate, and inspire each other, I say thank you. To the fire that destroys and motivates us to create, I give thanks. And to the water that sustains life, helps us to flow, and takes us deep into unknown places so that we may heal and grow, I thank you. To the human, plant, animal, and mineral ancestors, thank you for all that you do that is seen and unseen. Thank you for all that you do for us every day to guide our path and keep us safe. For all our listeners around the globe, thank you for your support. If we inspire, educate, or give you anything of value, please consider reciprocating with a share or review on iTunes or wherever you're listening. And if you'd like to do more, you can go to patreon.com/Pan Society and become an insider. We have group ancestral clearings, a book club, and an online class for those who want to take it to a deeper level. You can also join our free Facebook group and mingle with others who are interested in animism like you. So it's hard to talk about animism because it's such a big topic. It's life, really. But one of those things that I think lots of animists have in common is a love of trees. And I know our guest shares that love. Welcome, Laural.
Thank you. Welcome. It's nice to hear from you.
Thanks. So can you tell us how you became acquainted with trees?
Well, sure. When I was a little girl growing up in Frankfurt, Germany, which is where I was born, there was a park adjacent to our home. And this park was like a forest garden filled with old trees. And I played in that park just about every day, whenever my mother would let me go. And around the age of 6, I was walking on one of the paths through the real wooded part, and I sensed something to my left. And when I looked, I could visually see like a woman standing within the trunk of this tree. And I had my brother with me, who was a year younger, and I asked him, I said, can you see that lady in the tree? And he couldn't. And so it scared me that he couldn't see her. And I could see her so clearly. And she seemed to be like motioning to me. She wasn't scary or anything. She just was looking at me. But anyway, it scared me. So we ran off to the other side of the park, and I sort of forgot about it, and I thought, okay, that was very strange. And then later that night, or a few nights later, her spirit came to me in my sleep. And I don't know if it was a dream or if I woke up, but to me, it's like she came and there was a cloud hovering above my bed. And at first I was scared again because I thought, oh no, the lady in the tree knew that I saw her, and I'm in trouble. And the cloud kept coming towards me. And as it came towards me, it would change from kind of shades of gray to white to light gray to white. And I started to become not afraid anymore. And then finally it became very still right above me as I laid there. And then all of a sudden I could sense her speaking to me, but it wasn't a verbal speaking out. It was more like a speaking into my soul or my heart, or however you want to define that. And in my mind, we started having this conversation with each other. And I was like, why are you here? And she very clearly let me know that I was here because I had a special purpose. And I was like, what's that? She was like, you're here to help people understand each other better. And I thought, oh, okay, that would be fun. I'm 6 years old. I thought, yeah, that would be fun. And with that, I fell asleep. And so the next morning I woke up and I was kind of drowsy, and I was thinking about everything. And I was thinking about her and seeing her in the woods, and then having this vision overnight. And I thought, okay, what is going on here? Is this for real? And then I could hear again in my mind, well, what would it take for you to know this was real? And again, like a child, I was like, well, I would love to float down these stairs, because we lived in a large home. And there was this very steep staircase in front of me, because I was about ready to go downstairs for breakfast. And all of a sudden, I felt literally two hands come from behind and slip under my armpits and physically lifted me off the ground about 6 inches or 10, whatever, just enough that my feet left the ground. And then I could feel myself being gently floated down the stairs. And then at the end of the staircase, she set me back down on the ground. And as soon as my feet were secure, I could feel her hands slip out from under my armpits. And I turned around, and because I wanted to see her, but she wasn't there, and there wasn't anybody there. And so I went running into my mother, and mom, I just, I called her a tree spirit. I said, I had this tree spirit that came to me. And she was like, well, that's your active imagination. There's no such thing. And then I thought, like, guardian angel. And she says, there's no such thing. And, they don't show themselves to you, et cetera, et cetera. And, so I just kind of sat with that. And shortly after that experience, my father told us that we were going to be moving to the United States. It was very sudden. I loved living in Germany. And the next thing I knew, we were in the United States. We lived in Alexandria, Virginia for a while, and then we moved all around until we finally settled in a small town within months. And I had just turned 7 right as we came across the United States across the ocean. And so we settled in this small town, and my first day, the day before I was going to start my first day of school, I accidentally discovered I was adopted. And I was pretty shook up, because I was like, what? I'm adopted? What does this mean? You just took me away from this park I loved, and my tree spirit, and my people that I loved, and friends, and my school, and everything. And now I'm here, and I don't know anybody. And now you're not even my parents, and this isn't my country. And I was just so confused. And I was about to start 3rd grade in a new school in a small town. And I went to school that day, and the teacher asked me to introduce myself, and where was I from, yada, yada. And, and I was pretty confused. And I just said, all I know is that I've been adopted so I could have been hatched. I'm from Germany. And yeah, exactly. That was a reaction. Everybody started laughing at me, and but I was just this kind of indignant little girl. I was like, yeah, whatever. So, but unfortunately the kids, this was 1961 or 62. This was 1962. And, so then the kids started picking on me, because I was a new girl and I was adopted, and I was from, Germany. And so they kind of started picking on me and calling me Hitler's daughter and all this stuff. And so it got quite intense for me. And I didn't even know who that was. And so what I did was I started walking around, between the school and where we lived, just standing in front of the trees. Because I was like, okay, tree spirit, if you told me I'm here to help people understand each other better, but I don't even understand myself. How am I supposed to do that? And where are you? And why aren't you here to help me? And because I thought you'd help me in all of this. So I would stand in front of all these different trees, and I could tell they were very different energy, and none of them were speaking to me or talking to me. And so it took quite a while until finally it was the arborvitaes, which, we call cedars, but, they're cypress trees. And so the arborvitaes were the first to kind of welcome me and feel soft. And I felt like they were the first ones that kind of let me know it's okay. You'll be okay. We'll protect you. We'll be here for you. And then I started connecting with the oaks and the weeping willows that lived along Lake Michigan, because that's where I was living, was right along the shores of Lake Michigan, and these little streams. And so I would climb up in the trees, and but none of them were like the tree spirits, not like they were having that kind of intense communication. But I started realizing at that point, I realized from the moment that I met the tree spirit as a child, that there was way more to this world than what I realized. And so I knew that there was energy coming from the trees and the plants and the grass and the sky and the stones. And so I just played in nature, and I was very alone most of my early childhood. I didn't have a lot of friends. So nature really became my friend, So that's kind of how I got into trees.
I'm glad that you said that it took a while for the trees to talk to you, because I think what I hear from other people, and I'm no judge on anybody else's experience, is that, they're talking all the time. You go right up to them. They're super accessible, but that hasn't been my experience either. My experience is that they need to warm up to you, and they need to get to know you. So could you say more about that?
Well, sure. I think when you meet a tree, for me, it seems like, every once in a while, I will meet a tree that is just like an extrovert, that's like, whoa, so glad you're here, welcome. They just have real loud personalities, and you can feel it right away, but that's very rare. Most trees are they're a little, they watch and they hold space, and they're quiet. And so it takes a while. You need to visit them. You need to hang out with them. Some I can tell are more friendly than others, in terms of, and it's just like humans, some are shy, some are more receptive to wanting to create a relationship. And some align with you, and some don't align as easily, it's just like people, like as we meet people and how we feel when we meet people. But the thing is, I don't want to, because this happens a lot when I tell my story, is that people expect that they're going to have an experience like what I had, which was very visceral as a little girl. And honestly, I haven't had that experience again as an adult, in terms of feeling that kind of talking, where, I felt like I actually heard a voice talk to me. Mm-hmm. Now it's more like a connection, and what I do now, I live in Southern Oregon. So we moved from Wisconsin 5 years ago. And so I've had to learn a whole new ecosystem now, because it took me, 55 years to learn the trees in Wisconsin and know them and become intimate with them and feel comfortable with them, and vice versa. But now I'm in Oregon, and this is a lot, and there's a lot of trees here, and a lot of amazing trees. And I'm just now, after 5 years, starting to feel like I can listen to them, and they talk to me. And with the fires that we've had out here, last year, I could really feel like, because I started sensing I could feel them connecting and talking to me, because I think they realized I was listening, and I could feel that they were very worried, and they were really struggling, and I got really worried, and then this summer, when the fire season began and we had fires and smoke, I go out every night, and I go out every day, and I have these trees that surround us where we live, because we live kind of outside of town, and there's lots of trees around us. And I would talk to them and listen to them, and I could sense they were telling me it's going to be okay. We're in better shape now, and we're okay. We're going to be okay, and you're going to be okay, and it's going to be okay. I would go out like every night. I was like, are you going to be okay? Are we going to be okay? And it's like, yeah, we're going to be okay. We're stronger, and we can handle this. We weren't so sure last year when you talked to us, and I could feel my heart settle down from that. So it's taken, and that's been 5 years now, meeting these trees.
Yeah, that's been my experience too, is that it does take time. It is relational, and it's not fast, and they're long-lived creatures. They got all day, all year, all decade. Yeah. So I think some people gravitate towards certain trees because the energy just matches well. So theirs and yours.
Yeah.
Like I love beeches, dogwoods, redwoods, and yews. I think everybody loves redwoods and yews, but do you feel that way too? That the energy matches, or do you have a favorite?
Oh yeah. Well, since I've lived here, the madrones really match for me. We have these madrone trees with this amazing red smooth bark, and there's something magical about madrones. And I had never known a madrone before, so I'm really loving them. But other than that, I mean, like I said, arborvitaes, which thuja, cypress type tree. I love them. In Wisconsin, we have really large ones. You can't really climb in one. It's kind of hard to climb in one, but just there's something about them that's just really sweet. Beyond that, I too love beech trees. I just met a new beech tree, actually a little grove of beech trees, not a very large grove of old beech trees. And it was like walking in a temple. I mean, it was just amazing, and the way that everything hung down around, and it was just like, wow, yeah. So I love beech trees and oaks. There's a lot of trees that I love, actually. Yeah, but I probably relate as a human, to a tree. I would say the one that speaks to my heart the most and that's been around me the most are oaks, because they seem to be have been the most consistent and present in my life. It was a sweet chestnut tree that communicated with me as a child, but I don't meet very many sweet chestnut trees anywhere. So that's yeah.
So some of the interpretations or observations you have listed on your website, so the tree energy, is different from like the Bach flower essences. So I do see the similarities between stories in different cultures, meaning that, like you talked about the oak, and pretty much everywhere, I think everybody says they're strong. We know that. But then you'll see some other things that say, no, the oak is this, which is different. And does that mean that we can put our own spin on how a tree feels to us? Or is there one true way of seeing trees, or are they just multifaceted like people?
Well, I think they're multifaceted like people. And the other thing is that oaks, there's all these different kinds of oaks. And, depending on where they live, depending on how old they are, depending on the ecosystem they live in, depending on the species that they are, there's a lot of variations, just like there are in humans. So, that can all make a difference. Here in Oregon, we have Oregon white oak, and the leaves are very shiny. And then there's like an evergreen oak. So there are different oaks than what we have. I don't see an oak tree here that's like the oak trees in Wisconsin, or the oak trees that were in Frankfurt, Germany. And then there's oaks in the South that are, the big, huge, with the,
Yeah, the live oaks. Right? Yeah.
Those are amazing. So each one of those is going to have a very different personality and energy. And just as we, as humans, kind of project our stuff onto trees, that's also going to impact what our relationship or perception is of a tree. So
if somebody wanted to, so I'm not a great user of Bach flower essences by any means. So Yeah, discount anything I say if it's crazy. But if somebody wanted to tap into the energy of trees using that, and oak is one of them. They have oak, olive, like all kinds of things. Um, is that going to be effective? Being that there's so many different types of oaks?
Well, I'm not as familiar. I'm not that familiar with Bach essences. I mean, I've tried them, I've used them, but I'm not a practitioner of Bach,
Mm-hmm.
essences. So I can't speak to what species they're using. I would imagine it's probably the primary European oak, but I'm not sure. Honestly, I'd have to look into it. But I think with flower essences or essences, tree essences, that what we need to remember is that we're connecting with what I consider like this kind of archetypal energy.
Mm-hmm.
So there's one thing in terms of like our personal relationship that we're going to have with a certain tree at a certain day on a certain time, whatever, depending on our mood and a whole lot of things. If it's sunny or raining or whatever, it's all going to always, it could change. But then there's this other level beyond our everyday life that is that archetypal level that Jung kind of talks about, that's held in the collective unconsciousness. And so when I think of essences like tree essences or flower essences, I think that's more of what they're connecting in with is that archetypal energy.
That makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and what I was doing in the book was also trying to connect with some of that archetypal energy of oak. But then, if you read into, or on my website, I should say, because they're both out the same information, is that, then I went kind of into some of the stories of oak in terms of the naming of it and, sort of some of that, because I find the linguistics, the story behind the words of how things were named hold, again, these bigger stories, these archetypal stories. So that's also something I look at. But yeah, I think essences hold more the archetypal energy versus the personal, everybody's personal experience energy.
Mm-hmm. And you have a Jungian background, and I wouldn't call myself a Jungian by any means, but I do pay attention to the archetypes. Can you speak to how that can enrich your spiritual understanding, whether with the trees or anything in nature?
Oh, sure. You know, well, what I love about the concept of archetypes, and Plato understood the concept of archetypes, over 2,000 years ago. So this isn't a new concept, and it's kind of that idea that we share. It's okay. It takes us into this world of myth making. It takes us into the world of the sacred. It takes us into the world of beyond our everyday life and into more of this more expansive way of seeing ourselves, other people, our community, our world, our universe. It just takes us into this area of a deeper, richer, broader way of seeing. And so by doing that, it's kind of like the archetype of the eagle, being a bird that soars wingtip to wingtip between earth, the sky and the heavens and the cosmos. And by imagining that we are the eagle and imagining that we can soar that high, we can see now. We fly out of our like everyday issue that we might be dealing with, and we go to eagle and we fly way above the story, way above the wound, way above everything. And then we see this bigger picture of everything. And like eagle, you still have this amazing vision that can pinpoint down. But when you see this bigger picture, it's like, oh, that thing that was really consuming me, that was really troubling me, that was had me all wound up. Now, when I go into eagle, I can see this bigger picture, and it puts everything into a new perspective. And from this new perspective, I see what's important more clearly, and I can now adjust my perception. And move on from there. And so I think archetypes have that way of helping us maneuver through life so that, we can see things from that broader perspective and shift from that place.
Thank you. And in your tarot deck, how did you decide which trees would represent which elements?
So you mean in terms of like the four, like cups, pentacles, that part?
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, when I well, it was really easy to think of like, it wasn't hard at all, actually. I mean, cups, I right away thought of fruit because I thought juicy, they hold all this juice, and fruit is, thirst quenching, and, fruit trees give us lots of joy and love. And that's kind of like what cups does. And then pentacles, I thought of nut trees because a lot of cultures, before there was currency, nuts were a very valuable commodity. And so they were exchanged as currency. And so that seemed natural to me. And in terms of swords, I immediately thought of hardwood trees because I thought, swords can be made out of very hard wood. And and then in terms of wands, it was the evergreens, because I think evergreens, like I said before, my first tree in the United States that embraced me, was arborvitae. And, I love redwoods. There's a lot of evergreen trees that, capture my soul as well. And so I think of them as magical, they feel very magical. So when I think of wands, I think of magic. And so that's why. And then again, evergreen, just the concept of evergreen is kind of more of that, aligns with that tree of life, that kind of magical, continuation, that belief, and, all of that. So, yeah, so that's how I did that.
And how did you decide which trees would represent the major arcana?
That was really fun. A lot of it started out very intuitively. And then as I started researching or going deeper, I switched a couple of them around, but honestly, most of them were pretty intuitive. I knew that fig, because, in terms of the Empress, just fig being the nurture. And then I as I started learning more about fig, and then sycamore, Ficus sycamoris, the ancient kind of Egyptian fig, that just felt really right to me, because I think of the tarot as really tapping into this very ancient knowledge. So I wanted to try to find trees that held some of this very ancient knowledge. And because I had done, I should probably backtrack a little bit. Like I said, that my tree spirit came to me as a child at 6 years old, and it didn't really come to me in like a physical form throughout my life. But then when 9/11 happened, the day after 9/11, I was in the shower because I just was crying for the world. And taking showers has always been kind of where I connect with. That's been the place where I like clear and cleanse and connect. And as I was in the shower, I was thinking about the tree spirit, and I was thinking about my mission in life. And I was thinking, boy, I blew it. It's like, look at what's going on in the world. Look at all the anger, look at all the separation, and, and how religion has separated us, and just how all this fear and et cetera. And what am I supposed to do? Because how do I go back to, how do I fulfill my purpose? And I'd always been a person that was seeking and learning about the walls that separated us. But obviously I hadn't done enough. That's how I felt. So at that moment, as I was in the shower, it was like as if she appeared to me, and all of a sudden I was like, whoa. And, and I was like, oh, you're here. And then she's like, work with me as the tree of life. And I was like, whoa, okay, I could feel my entire body go electric. And even though that sounds kind of cliche, work with me as a tree of life, I knew immediately, as soon as I sensed that I needed to untangle the shared roots of world belief from 40,000 BC to present day. And I've always been somebody that's loves history, art history, any kind of history. And I have always studied and been curious about different religions. So this just was like, okay, I'm doing it. And so I just started untangling those roots and started researching world belief and indigenous belief, and going back, like I said, 40,000 BC on every continent, trying to understand this. And so by having that base of knowledge, so to speak, because that was 2001. And by the time I started writing Tree Spirit Tarot, it was 2018. So, or 2017. So I had 16 years of research that packed into my brain. So it was not that difficult for me to tap into some of the stories that I had learned along the way as I started identifying trees to go with the major arcana. So like pomegranate, just made total sense, because I always was intrigued by the tarot with the B and the J. I was like, okay, what is that about? And so it was like, you start reading about the whole story of Solomon's temple, and then you go into Solomon's temple, and then you realize, that there's pomegranates, engraved all over the two pillars, which represent, Boaz and Joachim, and the B and the J, and are like the left and the right, the moon and the sun, just all these kind of esoteric concepts. And it's like, okay, and that pomegranate is like the promised land, and it just holds all this imagery. And then you go back to, okay, what was that? Where did that all come from? And it shows you that these really ancient our beliefs that we have today, this Judeo-Christian belief that so many people are aligned with, have their roots in nature, and how the pomegranate influenced something as significant in the Judeo-Christian tradition as Solomon's temple. So, I wanted to make sure I could tell that story. And it was the same with oak, that oak held this really bigger story of God and how the word God came to be. And so, of course, I saw that as, the Father, the Divine Father. So, yeah. So anyway.
So how important or maybe informative is knowing the lore behind the trees, the symbolism is, it sounds to me like it gives you the ability to connect the things within the web. But let's say that you didn't have that. Do you think that people are able to intuit it just from the energy of the tree itself?
Maybe, I don't know, it's like, I think if they're open to it and seeking it, they could, but I think honestly right now, I think most people just walk by trees and don't think about it.
True. Yeah.
So it again depends on how open and aware and how seeking, how open you are to seeking that connection. So I think right now, I think there are a lot of people that can feel that, but I think there are probably more that right now don't feel that because they're not open or curious about it.
And maybe it's a cultural thing. So if it's in the culture, then there's just an awareness of it and it makes it easier. I don't know. Or maybe we are at a point where we do need to study that and bring it back into awareness.
I think we do need to bring it into awareness. I do agree, though, that it could be cultural. Definitely different cultures have a completely different relationship with nature.
Mm-hmm.
What I know, like when I go back, because I've gone back to Germany several times as an adult, and I can really feel the energy there different. And I think people have a different reverence for nature than I sense we have here in the United States. I know that there are people, obviously I am absolutely not saying that there are not people in the United States that care very deeply about nature, because there absolutely are. And, most of my friends are, and I obviously so I don't want to make it sound like people here don't have that ability, but I think our popular culture doesn't really encourage that. And I think, there's, how can I say, I feel like, we've got so caught up in media and consumerism and just politics. And there's just so many things going on around us right now that kind of can detract. And yet I know people, when they go into the forest, if they have a forest near them, that's one of the things, they can feel that, and it feels calming and they can relax. But, are they connecting with a certain tree? I'm not sure, but they might be feeling, they know that by being in nature feels better. Unfortunately, we have more and more people living in cities, and hopefully those cities are creating, beautiful green spaces for people to connect. So I think it's a challenge that we have here, as people are moving away from rural areas and into cities.
So let's say that someone was reared in an urban culture and just hasn't had that much exposure to trees, and is like listening to this and is just wildly inspired and be like, oh, I need to do that. What suggestion would you give them to get started in making that connection?
Well, find the closest botanical garden, arboretum, forest, national park, whatever, that's close to where you live. There could just be a beautiful little park, or even a tree that lives a couple blocks away. I mean, I don't know, depending on the urban environment they're living in. But absolutely, if you can be near nature, I encourage people to do that. And if they have the space in their yard to plant a tree, I would encourage them to do that. But some people don't have yards. Some people are in apartments. And, so then it's like, well, you could get some photos of trees, surround yourself with that energy, with that beauty, and bring live plants into your space. Go out in nature, ask for, see if you can collect some stones or, things that are laying on the ground that seem to be open to being collected, and bring a little bit of that into your apartment to create kind of like a little altar or a space, something that would connect you to that place.
Any thoughts about tree hugging?
I think it's good if you can go out and hug a tree. That's always a good thing. Some trees are more huggable than others, right?
I totally agree with that. Yes.
So,
do you have any special tree meditations?
Oh boy. What I tend to do, I don't have like a verbal meditation, but what I tend to do is, again, depending on the tree, depending on the environment, if I can sit under the tree, I like to sit with my back against the tree. But again, not all trees, can allow you to do that. But if I can stand with my back against the tree, I like to put my spine up against the tree and just kind of connect energetically that way. The other way that is, because I feel like I can really like we can merge. I mean, the other way is front, with your heart, but sometimes that's actually harder, to get to like kind of go into the trees. So, but trees that I can actually hug and put my arms, embrace them and put my heart into them. That feels great too. So that a lot of times I'm just standing there and I just stare up at them, and I feel it's always different, but what I do is it's just still, I'm just still and quiet and listening and feeling and connecting and standing there for however long I want to. But that's like it's pretty simple. I don't really have a structured meditation, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah. I like laying underneath them too and just looking up.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Anything depends, again, like if there's space to lay there. I right now I tend to be in these woods in Oregon, and they're pretty hilly. So it's not so easy to lay. And the roots are very exposed. So it's like, and the redwoods, the redwoods aren't far from us. So I'm in the redwood forest quite a bit. But even there, it's not easy to lay in a redwood forest. So yeah, but you can certainly stand there and feel it. So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Laural. Can you tell us about your books and tarot cards?
Sure. Well, I've written 3 books, and the book that you're referring to primarily is Tree Spirit Tarot. And I've been self-publishing at this point, and I'm trying to find a publisher that can help me turn it into a deck. So it's been a bit of a clumsy process because I had this great idea. I created it, but it's just a matter of getting it, so it's an affordable, easy, because I'd like to have it so that it's like a set, but it's not really a set. So that's why I put the information that I have in the book on the website, Tree Spirit Wisdom. So because I wanted, my main goal, obviously, my main purpose in life is to do, to help people understand each other better. And I felt that by doing the research and putting this energy of the trees in alignment with the tarot, that was part of what I was doing. But then I realized not everyone is into the tarot. And by navigating through the website from a tarot perspective, it was a little more clumsy. So then I created Tree Spirit Wisdom and then aligned the trees in an alphabetical order. So they're not, if you read the book, Tree Spirit Tarot, you'll see how those trees align with the tarot. But if you go to Tree Spirit Wisdom, all the information that I have in Tree Spirit Tarot, other than just knowing what, card it's affiliated with, it's all there. The messaging, all of that is the same. So I did that because I wanted to get the information out so people didn't have to feel they had to purchase the book or the deck, that they could get the information. And the same thing with Mandala Chakra. I created a book that, again, was inspired by trees, but it was the concept of the tree of life within us, because I originally had called it Tree of Life Awakening, but then I connected it more with the chakras and put together a book and a deck, and then did the same thing and created a website called mandalachakra.com. And it kind of looks at the 7 chakras from 7 different perceptual states, including the archetypes of nature, the elements of nature, sacred geometry, Jungian consciousness, sacred beliefs, which is kind of the 7 major belief systems, and then oneness, and then the kind of the archetype of the chakras themselves. So it sort of is like a roadmap to go through and see yourself from all these different perspectives. And I put all that information as well on a website so people could access it for free. And then the other book that I've written is my autobiography called The Guardian Tree. That kind of, because my story is fairly complex. And so instead of when people ask me about my story, I just say, well, you can read the book. So that's also available. But I don't have that online. That's something a person would have to purchase. So, yeah.
And where are your websites?
Well, my primary website is lauralwaters.com. And on that site, you'll see the links to the books and the decks and, bio and then classes that I used to have classes. I used to teach a lot of classes on all of this. But since I've moved to Oregon, there's been a lot of things that have been going on. And then now with COVID, I just haven't been able to find a space or create an environment where I felt like we could do this. So it's been a little challenging not teaching. But I'm hoping that, eventually that will happen again. But cool. Some on the website, can see some of the classes that I plan to offer. So.
Okay. Well, post that in the show notes so people can find that. And our guest again is Laural Virtues Wauters. Thank you, Laural, and thank everyone today for listening. And don't forget to leave a review for the podcast, if you please. And also check us out on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok if you're on any of those social media platforms. I'm Laura Giles, and I'll see y'all next week.